Yeah, that's an excellent question, and we have a formula that basically it protects against misguidance. And basically it's the law of knowing the Hujjah, or the law of how to identify the messenger from God. And it essentially consists of three parts. And it is first and foremost, that the individual, you can know whether he's true or false by whether or not his name has been mentioned by his predecessors. Okay? So, why is this important? This is important because sometimes you get people that come and they say, I'm a messenger from God, but they have no proof. These people, you can disregard them right away. If they don't say, actually, my name existed in the book of this prophet or that prophet, then they are automatically disqualified. Why? Because this is not the method that any of the prophets or the messengers used in order to prove their case. When the Prophet Muhammad proclaimed to the Arabs that he was a messenger from God, that was insufficient. That was unacceptable. He had to state that he was Ahmed, or the Comforter, who was mentioned on the tongue of Jesus. And that's why you have a verse in the Holy Quran that says, وَمُبَشِّرًا بِرَسُولٍ يَأْتِي مِنْ بَعْدِي اسْمُهُ Ahmed. Right? And giving glad tidings of a messenger to come after me whose name is Ahmed. It was essentially, the verse was Muhammad stating and God testifying through the Quran that Jesus had gave already an appointment of Muhammad. He gave a prophecy saying that Muhammad's going to come. He had already declared from before Muhammad's name. And so when Muhammad comes and proclaims that he was the one that was prophesied by Jesus, it becomes a sort of peace and comfort of proof for all of those who come, right? Because it's not a new thing. It was something that didn't come out of the left field. It was something that they were supposed to already be expecting and waiting for. And the same thing is true in Christianity. When Jesus came, he had to say, I was already foretold in the book of Isaiah, right? And that's why they use that as a proof. And John the Baptist had to testify and proclaim that Jesus was the truth, right? So he had the testimony of the prophets and the messengers. He had John proclaiming Jesus, and he also had Isaiah proclaiming Jesus, and really Moses had also proclaimed Jesus in various sources. And so every person who's to come has to have been proclaimed by people that came before them. That's the first aspect of the law. Their name has to exist in the will, in the final testament of the messenger that comes before them, right? And so Jesus, who in the Bible, when he says, that he's going to build his church upon Simon, those words that came from Jesus, that he's giving him the keys, those words that were recorded by the disciples, Simon Peter could always refer back to as proof of appointment. That's his letter of appointment, right? That's where he draws this legitimacy from. That's where nobody else can proclaim themselves to be the rightful heir, because Jesus said and the disciples heard and it was written down. So that's the first aspect, but it has to also accompany two other things. And if it doesn't accompany these two other things, then that proclamation alone doesn't stand. The second aspect of the law is that that individual has to be knowledgeable. His knowledge has to be superior to others. The people have to testify when they hear him and say, this person is a great teacher. That's a great philosopher. That person has spoken with authority. We have never heard somebody speak like him, right? So this we find happening in the case of Jesus. In the Bible, the people proclaimed that. They recognized that. They heard him saying, I was mentioned on the tongue of Isaiah, and they also heard him and saw him being appointed by John, and they also, testified that he was a great orator and he was a wise sage and a wise teacher, and the people even thought him to be a prophet, right? And so this has to be anybody who's proclaiming to be a divine messenger. The third and final aspect that has to gather in the person who's proclaiming himself to be a messenger is that his system of rule that he's calling towards. Like, what is he calling towards? What is the banner that he's raising? Is he raising the banner of communism? Is he raising the banner of democracy? Is he raising the banner of socialism? What is he calling towards, right? And every prophet and messenger only called towards one thing, and that thing has been consistent from the time of Adam all the way until today. They call towards the idea that allegiance is only to God, right?